I'm Scott Goldman, and this is the Grammy Museum's Programs at Home. Our guests today are members of a band whose 2004 debut, Hot Fuss, became one of the biggest releases of the decade. Since that time, they've released a consistent run of top 10 albums while developing a passionate fan base, regularly filling arenas and stadiums around the world. They're here today following the release of their sixth studio album entitled Imploding the Mirage. From the Killers, Brandon Flowers, Ronnie Vannucci, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I seem to start all these interviews these days talking about quarantine. Brandon, how are you doing?
We're spoiled. We recently made a move to the mountains in Utah, and so when everything kind of hit the fan, we were in an all right spot because we could go on walks and be outside and things like that. And so we count ourselves among the lucky ones.
Yeah.
We miss touring and that connection and all the things that we get from that. But we're looking forward to a vaccine and everybody getting healthy.
For sure. Ronnie, has it been a chance to dive further into music or just take a breather?
Well, when this whole thing hit, the pandemic, we were still in finishing touches of the album, and we sort of never moved from that. Usually we get done with the record, then we go in and we rehearse for a while and get in shape and then hit the road. Well, that part never happened. So we've been sort of in this sort of holding pattern of being in studio mode, which hasn't been too bad. It's sort of nice to stay there for a while. And we're working on another record right now.
Yeah, and we'll get. I want to get to that a little bit later. But let's talk about this album. And I know that you guys had been on a break prior to getting in the studio to make this album. You had a studio set up there in Utah. But were there more challenges with this than maybe you had originally thought, Brandon?
Yeah, we're fairly consistent about going in and writing, and we stayed true to form. We had a lot of songs written, but a monkey wrench, in the plan occurred when we sort of had this idea for a communal experience where we rented a house in Park City and people were going to come and stay the night, and we set up some gear, and if you were a writer or producer, and it was this utopia that we had planned, and it was fun. People were coming, and then a team came. Jonathan Rado and Sean Everett came, and it just sort of clicked, and all the stuff that we had done up until that point, we ended up not using, and we ended up, going forward with them.
Well, Ronnie, why? Because I know you kind of went through this process of, if you will, maybe interviewing producers and trying to get a sense of who to work with on the album. When you finally got to Sean and Jonathan, why did that work so well?
It was sort of refreshing. We were going places we didn't expect to go, is the short answer. It felt sort of uncomfortable in a great way. We were sort of pulling things out that were in us before, but perhaps never landed the right way. And they gave us this confidence, it was, it's just when somebody enters a room, a new light enters the room, it's refreshing.
Yeah.
Brandon,
did they push you? Did they kind of push you into areas that maybe weren't exactly your comfort zone?
Yeah, we are guilty of relying on the progress made with electronics and with computers, and somebody like Rado is a purist, and he doesn't like to mess around with that as much. He doesn't if he had his way there, Pro Tools wouldn't even exist. And so that was there's a nice push and pull between him and Sean, who's actually very open to anything and wants to explore everything. And so we have both of those sides in us, and these two just sort of exploited them. And I realized, oh, maybe we need, we want this to be more organic in this section, or or it's okay for this to go to outer space here, or And anyway, those two ended up being perfect for that.
Ronnie, are you guys generally willing to experiment? Like chasing down whatever sound you might hear in your head, kind of no matter where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think every time we make a record, I always feel like we want another shot at it, or to do something different, or there's a thought that wasn't examined all the way through maybe. And so a lot of that sort of mining for that kind of stuff comes from experimentation, and we want to grow, and that's part of growing, I think.
Yeah. Brandon, I read that Vampire Weekend's Father of the Bride provided some inspiration. Can you tell me about that?
It was more a kick in the pants.
How so? How so?
Yeah, I'm friends with Ariel who recorded that, and he ended up helping out on this record a little bit once he was finished with them. But one night I was in LA and I went and had dinner with Ariel, and after dinner he played me about eight of the tracks before they were finished. And it just, to me, Ezra graduated to some new level that I hadn't heard him get to before. And it made me realize that maybe around that time I was guilty of phoning it in a little bit. It's a big machine that we drive, and there's a lot of pressure to get people in the arenas and get everybody back on the road, and sometimes things maybe slide by the wayside that shouldn't. And it made me I recall feeling, the last time I felt like that I think was when Is This It came out by the Strokes.
Yeah,
I had that again, that feel. It was it's kind of an ugly feeling, but it also is it's a driving force for me, and it helped us. I think it helped us want to be better and do better.
Yeah, and just thinking about going from one album to the next. I had an artist tell me once that every album that he made was somehow a reaction to the last album he made. And I'm wondering for you guys, Ronnie, is this in any way a reaction to Wonderful, Wonderful?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think it's whatever you want to call it, the next chapter, the next book. It's definitely lighter. It discusses whereas the last record was sort of heavy and discussed a lot of weight. This one sort of narrates the other side, the coming out of the storm, if you will. And I think I think that's true. I think that's true, because you're always, I would think that you always sort of want to do better than what you did before in some way.
Yeah. Brandon, you've talked about, kind of a thematic thread for this album that ties to the image on the cover.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
We start, the first song that we wrote with Rado and Sean around was called My God. And it was, it has this spirit of letting go and of overcoming, basically trials and tribulations in a relationship, and persevering. And around that same time, I was looking at images. I'm a fan of this sort of Western landscapes, and there's this guy named Thomas Blackshear, and he does a lot of that. And then he also does a lot of spiritual stuff, and he combined them on this one image. And I started seeing more songs that fit within this image that we had been writing, and I, the light kind of came on, and it was like, what if, we did something we'd never done before. We started printing out this image without his permission yet, and putting it around the studio.
Guess what? He knows now.
Yeah. And it was like, what if this is the album cover? What if this was a North Star for us? And what if this is something that we need to, that we can follow through and make a complete artistic statement? And we started doing that, and it was amazing. Songs didn't make it that maybe would have made it on another record or another time. Sounds and lyrics were all informed by this image, and it was a beautiful thing. It became a member of the band, and I think I could see us continuing doing that in the future.
Ronnie, what did you see in that image?
Just a bunch of clouds and stuff. It was helpful. It was we always sort of get in our own way. Sometimes I think we're certainly guilty of that. For whatever reason, you got 4 guys in the band and we're all hitting it from different angles. This was the one. It was just sort of like Brandon said, the North Star, the compass. And visual representation is sometimes helpful because sometimes what you're trying to explain to the other guys of what you're feeling or how it should sound, or a sound that should belong on the song or on this record, is really hard to explain. And so having a visual representation of the mood is really helpful.
You've got a number of guests on this album. Wise Blood, Adam from War on Drugs, Lucius is on this album, but you've also got Lindsey Buckingham. You got to tell me, how did you get Lindsey Buckingham on this record?
We were in LA recording. We're at Vox, and there's just something about being there. I mean, don't you just feel like when we're there, I feel the Heartbreakers, and I feel Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles, and it's just it's on the brain, I think, whenever we go there.
Mm-hmm.
And that spirit. And so we were looking for a little help on Caution, and kind of jokingly brought up Lindsey.
Yeah. And someone was in the room, said, well, I can call him. and it was an easy call. He was there the next day at like 1 p.m. and we all helped him with his guitars and pedals out of his car. And I tell you what was really cool about Lindsey. I don't think he had the song before. We wanted him to work on a bunch of songs, so we only had time to do Caution. But when he got in there, he listened to it maybe 2 times down and just got it. Just knew what to do. Let me do this. Let me do the old, the tape speed trick that he used so many times on Fleetwood Mac stuff and his solo stuff. And he just knew what was missing, and something was definitely missing, and that's why we had to call, a heavy hitter like that.
well, and you mentioned recording at Vox, and this was done Sound City as well. I think you were there. Brandon, how much does environment affect the work?
I think, sometimes it makes you, when you're aware of what's been done in a building, there's something that makes you want to elevate your game. And maybe there's just a spirit that some rooms have. It reminds me of also working with someone like we've been lucky enough to work with Daniel Lanois in the past, and people like that.
Right.
They carry with them, he's like one of those buildings, there's something about him, and it makes you want to be better. And it's almost like they create this environment for that to be possible, where it isn't in some places. And there's a magic to it. And we definitely felt that at Sound City. We felt that at Vox, and we felt that with Daniel Lanois. But yeah.
Well, he's among the coolest. But so in talking about, either, whether it's working with Lindsey Buckingham or working amongst the members of the band or other guests, collaboration is obviously the key to making music. Why are you guys good collaborators? What makes the band work?
I don't know that we are, but
We are together.
we are together. I guess.
Yeah. No, we've gotten more as we've gotten older. We've gotten a lot more open to it. In the beginning, it was sort of
This is my corner.
Yeah,
We should
yeah.
talk about drums.
Really? Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think with age and wisdom and experience, we're a lot more open to other people's contributions and their gifts. And people, there's so many talented people, and yeah, it's all, I'm always open to see what they have to bring to the table. We always learn from every producer we've ever worked with. There's something that I learn and that I will end up applying on the next record, whether they're a part of it or not.
That's the funny thing is, like, when you grow up being a young musician, that's all you're doing is trying to play with other people. And then somehow when you get a record deal and you get a song on the radio, all of a sudden you feel shit hot and nobody can tell you what to do anymore. That's totally the wrong way to go about it. And I don't think we had a real problem with it, but I think we've been guilty of a little bit of that. And I think since we've been more open to the idea of collaboration, just playing around with other people, even not to make a record, you get to learning again, which is something I don't think we'll ever stop doing.
I think one of the things that, and I'm not sure this gets talked about a lot, one of the things about this record, different perhaps from your earlier work, there's a female component here. And I'm thinking of the track Lightning Fields and Katie Lang.
Yeah.
First of all, tell me about working with Katie Lang.
Yeah, it goes back to that image again. There's a man and a woman on the cover, and we wanted to represent that and have that component on the record. And this isn't about one person persevering. It's about relying on someone and the beauty of that. And so we had a couple of, like you brought up earlier, a couple of female spots, and yeah, a treat for us was Katie Lang for sure. We wish we could have been in the studio with her, but we had to do it remotely. Yeah. But what a voice, and just iconic, and we were so thrilled when she said yes, and it's really great.
There's also an aspect on this album of and don't take this the wrong way, of the eternal, kind of this sense of eternal love and a spiritual aspect, let's put it that way. But there's a fine line between that and potentially tipping over into something more akin to Christian rock. How do you find that? How do you thread that needle?
It's tough. It's a tough one to walk. We always looked up to people like U2, and people like Johnny Cash and even Springsteen at times, and that were able to use that imagery and use those feelings and still stay on the right side of the line. Yeah. And so that's something that that I aspire to do. I'm a very it's no secret that I'm a religious person, and so and I also want to represent everybody in the band, and yeah, it is. But like you said, it's a fine line for sure.
I'd like to add that we got our first drum riser from the Christian rock band Striper.
This is good to know.
Yeah.
Was making this album in any way reminiscent of making your early albums? Did it feel a sense, kind of that energy?
Yeah, actually, that's funny you asked that. I never thought of it that way, but we have two other members in the band, Dave and Mark, who Dave wasn't around for any of this record. Mark was around a couple times, and that was kind of uncomfortable, but that also put us in that old spot again where there was this new feeling, kind of, there's a lot of it was on our shoulders, but because we were doing a lot of playing with Jonathan Rado and other people, the other guests and stuff, there was this new sort of band, if you will. Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting thought. I never.
Yeah.
Just
Uh,
well, there were just so many moments too that felt reminiscent of the
Mhm.
excitement of the first couple records. Um, just these songs, we had that a similar feeling where you just feel like that they're going to transcend and that they're going to land where we want them to land. And live, we were so looking forward to playing them live, and we still are. But yeah, there were a lot of that. There was some kind of spirit that did feel very, very reminiscent of that.
Yeah. Brandon, during the lockdown, you guys did a kind of an updated performance, if you will, of the song "Land of the Free," and you changed some of the lyrics to reflect the tragedy with George Floyd. Why was it important to you to do that?
I think we had written the song a couple of years before and put it out, and it's just, first of all, it was horrible that it was relevant. It was we wish that it never had to be written, and then to have something that sort of still fit perfectly within the framework happen. I mean, we didn't think when we wrote the song that it was going to stop ugly things like that from happening. But it's almost like something that you do when you are working through, your own prejudices and the things that you experienced growing up, and you're hoping to become better and let your kids know how you feel about something, and there's just so many different emotions that are going on, and to see what the tragedy and the way that George Floyd was treated, and it was just those that anger and that stuff that was on the surface just kind of came up again, and we just felt like we wanted to reinterpret the song to kind of be a part of that moment.
Going back to kind of where we started, as Ronnie was saying, you guys went right back to work, recording what will likely be your next album. So what can you tell me about the work you're doing now?
We pretty much same producers. We're going with Sean and Rado again, and this will be the first time that we've ever done 2 in a row with the same producers.
Yeah.
So this will be our 7th record. It'll be the first time that we've used the same team or the same producers again, and we're really excited. What can we say about it?
I don't know. So we had a lot of cutting room floor stuff. Well, I won't even say cutting room floor. It's just a lot of other good songs that didn't find its way onto Imploding the Mirage. So we have those, and we sort of dissected them in 2 different groups. One was sort of on the lighter side, and one was on the darker side. And then we started working on those darker songs. And so we're kind of in that vein right now. But that through that we sort of found ourselves on another road. It's just often the case with us. We set off to do one thing, and it ends up being totally different. So there's a lot of acoustic guitars so far.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's something to hang your hat on. You guys obviously have been one of the hardest working bands in terms of touring and 100 shows a year and all this kind of stuff. How much, when you're recording, how much is the live experience in your thinking?
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Actually quite a bit. Especially coming off of a tour like we did, and go right, starting in with the writing and recording, we still had that presence of mind to think about what a mid-tempo song sounds like, against all of our old songs. It sounds really slow. So we think about tempo and key, and Brandon's getting a lot older now, so we have to, take things down.
Lower everything, yeah.
Not too much. No, but we're it's no secret we're big admirers of U2 and the Stones and Springsteen, and people that have perfected the live show experience. And then being from Las Vegas, you know, gives us certain, you know,
license,
latitude,
latitude.
and we take advantage of that for sure. And it's become a big part of our identity. So it's definitely a part, and it's definitely in the back of, at least in the back of your mind when you're in the studio.
I mean, you know, given where we are with the pandemic and how hard you guys generally work, you must feel like you're missing a limb by not being able to go out and tour.
I do. Yeah, there's some, there's the phantom something in my life.
You said the other day, I feel like I'm getting soft, man. This can't happen anymore. I think what we're going to end up doing is we're just going to start rehearsing and practicing. So
Good
at least
idea.
when, you know,
You'll be ready.
yeah, we'll be ready. And that will sort of scratch that itch of, you know, playing live.
Sure.
Because when we do play, it's only 5 minutes at a time for a take or something like that. And so, yeah, I'm getting
Well,
soft.
so I only have one more question, and it really, it has to do with, we were talking about Lindsey Buckingham, and I read a quote of his after his experience with you guys. He said, "There's such a strong center to what they're doing. Their material is so well crafted that it cuts across generational lines." Brandon, when you hear a guy like that say something like that, what does it mean to you?
I mean, it's surreal, you know, but it means a lot, and it's
That's nuts.
yeah. I mean, it's great to hear things like that, and we've been, you know, doing it now for about 20 years, and it's, I don't know how to answer it, but it feels.
I give
$100.
I didn't think it would go that far.
Well, all I know is the record's terrific. We look forward to the next one, and hopefully, you know, seeing you guys maybe even at the Grammy Museum at some point when we're all allowed out again. Brandon Flowers, Ronnie Vannucci, The Killers, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, everybody.